Well, thank you everybody for joining Transition Tuesday. We have with us folks from Department of Developmental Services. With us, we have Jennifer Bundy, who is with the Newington office and a transition advisor.
Hello.
Jean Cox with the New Haven office is a South Regional Transition Advisor. Zachary Washbond with the Cheshire office, who is West Regional Transition Advisor. And we also have with us Kendall Fenton, who is an Education Service Specialist with the Children's Services Division. So welcome all and thank you. And we will get started. Give me a moment to get the slides up. And just give me a thumbs up when you can see my slides. Okay, good. Perfect. Okay, welcome. And if you can take it away, Jennifer, thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Laura. Thank you for hosting such an important informational event. It's really important to get the word out there about what DDS is and how we can help families. And this might be a lot of information that I'm sharing, and it could be overwhelming, but just know that we're always here to help and to answer questions, and that the more you hear this information, the easier it will be. So thank you so much for hosting this. Next slide, please. I think it's always very important to go over what our mission is here at DDS and our vision. The mission of the Connecticut Department of Developmental Services is to partner with the individuals we support and their families to support lifelong planning and to join with others to create and promote meaningful opportunities for individuals to fully participate as valued members of their community. What is our vision? That all citizens supported by DDS are valued contributors to their communities as family members, friends, neighbors, students, employees, volunteers, members of civic and religious associations, voters, advocates, and much, much more. We believe these individuals should live, learn, work, and enjoy community life in places where they can use their personal strengths, talents, and passions, and share these passions and strengths with everyone. Have a safe, meaningful, and empowering relationships with others. Have families who feel supported from the earliest years and throughout their lifetime. So that's why we really do encourage families to apply as early as possible. That way we can help support families. Have lifelong opportunities and the assistance to learn things that matter to them, make informed choices, and take responsibility for their lives and experience the dignity of risk. And I know that, dignity of risk can be challenging at times for everyone. Earn money and facilitate personal choices, and know their rights and responsibilities and pursue opportunities to live the life that they choose to live. Next slide, please. So how do you become eligible for DDS? First, you need to be a resident of the state of Connecticut, and you need to meet the statutory definition of intellectual disability as defined by Connecticut General Statute 1-1G. That is, a person may have a full-scale IQ of 69 or below, as indicated on intelligence cognitive tests, and significant limitations in adaptive functioning that began during the developmental period, which is before the age of 18. Here is a link that can take you directly over to our eligibility application. You're not able to complete the application online. You'd have to print it out and either send it in or email it. Another form of eligibility would be having the medical diagnosis of Prader-Willi syndrome. And again, the disability must have originated during the developmental years, which is prior to age 18. Next slide, please. So what is the DDS eligibility process like? You would complete the application. That is about a 2 to 3 page application, and it's pretty simple with basic information and demographic information. You'd have to have a signed application. You'd also have to complete some HIPAA forms, and you would also need to provide a copy of the applicant's birth certificate current medical insurance card, and social security card. Also requested would be the last medical exam report, which could also be like a report that you send to a school each year that's filled out by the doctor. The last 3 IEPs from the school, and most recent triennial if available. The schools are really great partners with helping families to provide us with that documentation and give that to families. So that's a really big help. And also a copy of a guardianship or conservatorship, if that's applicable or not. And we, again, do really encourage applying as soon as possible and as young as possible. So once DDS receives the fully completed application, it takes approximately 2 to 3 months to receive a determination. An eligibility letter will be sent to the applicant by email if the email address was provided. If one is not provided, the letter would be mailed to the applicant via regular US mail. Then you'd be contacted for an introduction to DDS services. That means that you'd be eligible for Helpline supports. And I'll be going over that in some future slides of what those supports could look like. If eligibility is denied, you can appeal that within 60 days of the date of the letter that you receive. Past 60 days, you will have to reapply. It is very important to note that services are voluntary. Unlike the school years that are mandated by law, services and supports available through DDS are neither mandated nor entitlements, therefore subject to appropriations from the state legislature every year. Next slide, please. The Autism Spectrum Disorder Waiver Unit has moved to the Department of Social Services. However, the eligibility determinations are still processed through our department. If diagnosed with autism and without intellectual disability, the file will be transferred to the Department of Social Services. Eligibility criteria for the Autism Disorder Waiver Unit would be diagnosis before age 22 and expected to continue indefinitely. The person must have substantial limitations in 2 or more of the following major life activities: self-care, understanding and use of language, learning, mobility, self-direction, and the capacity for independent living. It should be noted that there currently is a wait list for services under this program, and it is really important to apply as early as possible. So then you're put on that wait list based on the date that you applied. There is a great person at DSS who is a resource specialist for the autism division, and his name is Nate Callisto, and his information is provided on this slide. Also, I encourage you to visit the DSS website. There's a wonderful resource library that he put together on there. Next slide, please. DDS is divided into 3 regions: the North, the South, and the West. I am one of 6 transition advisors in the North region, and you can see how the areas are determined based on your towns here. So each region has their own helpline. It consists of 4 DDS case managers, and they act as an individual's case manager until they have their own assigned case manager. So I really think it's important to take this information down, maybe keep the phone number and email address on your refrigerator so it's easy to access. But these are the helpline emails and phone numbers, which are services and supports that could be available to you once found eligible for DDS.
These are pre-planned visit stays. The individual and family would go tour the facility. Doctor's orders would be completed, and lots of preparation in hopes for a pleasant stay. And families could request this service support about once to twice a year, maybe on a quarterly basis. It really depends on the availability. It's free for families. The only money that needs to be sent with their loved one is if they're going maybe out to eat or to a movie or bowling. They like to do lots of activities, and so you'd have to provide your own money for that, but everything else is free. And it's really important to give our individuals sometimes a break, and also the loved ones from caregiving. So respite is a nice also way to see if someone might be ready for an overnight summer camp. This is like a short abbreviated stay that could be helpful. Camp Harkness pass. We do offer an annual pass for Camp Harkness. It is a beachfront property, a state park property located in Waterford, Connecticut, and it's for individuals with all disabilities that is defined by ADA, not only individuals part of DDS, but individuals that would fall under disability under ADA. I did put the application, it's a one-page application, in our chat. Hopefully everyone can see that in our little chat box here. If you have an assigned case manager and are part of DDS, the case manager can sign and then it could be sent in. If you do not have a DDS case manager but are part of DDS, you would write in DDS Helpline and also ask for the DDS ID number. Either a transition advisor can give you that number or the Helpline case manager can give you that number. If you're not part of DDS but would like to apply, you can bring this form simply to your medical provider and they can fill it out and you could send it in. It's just great, a wonderful beachfront access, a park, picnic tables, and it's for up to the individual and up to, I believe, 5 guests at a time. So that's something that you could request on the helpline. Also, we have family grants. That is disability-related expenses that may not be covered through your insurance. So you would call the helpline and ask for a family grant and put in a request for something that is not covered. For example, we have families request a grant for a summer camp or maybe for therapeutic horseback riding or art therapy. So again, funding would have to be available, but it's always good to call the helpline and ask to see. If funding happens to be dried up, they might tell you to call back in a few months. We also have temporary family support workers. They are DDS employees. We call them our boots to ground workers. They help families, and they're wonderful assets that can be used on a temporary basis. Maybe, for example, you have difficulty bringing your loved one to a medical appointment alone. You could call in advance and see if a family support worker can assist you with that. And there's all different requests for reasons why someone may want to use a family support worker on a temporary basis. Another support is transition advisors, like myself, and we help families and individuals prepare from school supports over to adult supports and try to make that as smooth as possible. Typically, we service students as young as 16 through 22, but we could also be available upon referral for ages 14 and 15. And we also have a wonderful clinical team of consultants. They could be community liaisons to help make connections within the community, and they can be available on a consultative basis. So we have speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychologists, behaviorists, and nurses. So these are some services that may be available to you and your loved one once found eligible for DDS. Okay, and now I'd like to turn the presentation over to my colleague, Kendall Fenton, for the Children's Unit.
Hi everyone, I'm Kendall Fenton. I am the Education Services Specialist for DDS's relatively new Children's Services Division. My information is on this slide and I'll make sure to also put it in the chat when I'm done speaking. So the Children's Services Division, our goal is to provide specialized case management and appropriate support and services to help transition young adults into DDS adult services. We have 2 functions as of right now. First, we help with the transition planning for those individuals or children who are receiving agency support outside of DDS. So this support could include DCF, VCM, which is the Voluntary Care Management Program, or if a child is placed residentially through their school system. And then our other function is that we oversee an in-home support program for those individuals with DDS annualized funding. And these individuals are between the ages of
Go
8
put it in
and
your,
21.
go. You talk too much.
The most utilized services in our program are often respite, individualized home supports, and behavior support. So that could look like ABA in the home with different outside agency providers. It is important that our in-home support program, the child must be first eligible for DDS, and they must apply for children's services before the age of 18. And to apply or to be referred to the Children's Services in-home support program, all you would need to do is reach out to your regional helpline and tell them you would like to be referred to Children's Services. They will collect your information and they send it over to us. And we will reach out to you directly to complete an application, which is done all over the telephone. What else? So service requests for out-of-home placement are not considered for the program. And the most important thing too is that this program, the in-home support program, are for these DDS eligible children who either have a medical need, so they could be medically complex, they may need nursing within the home, they may have a need with physical or physical disability, so they need help with ADLs, that kind of go beyond maybe what services they might be getting, or they may have a challenging behavior, again, which may go beyond, say, whatever services are in place. So if your child is receiving, say, 5 hours of ABA a week, you're still struggling in the home with these behaviors, and you think that you need more, the child needs more help, then that would be a good referral to us. And then we would try, if you were found eligible, try to get those other supports in place to kind of beef up what's already going on. And that's kind of it really quickly. If you have any questions, any specific questions or any questions about maybe your family, if that would be a good fit, again, please email me. You can email the general email. I do check that, or just directly email me. And we can kind of talk about what's going on and see if your child be a good fit for the in-home program.
Kendall, can you just review what ADLs are and ABA? Because not all the folks on here will understand what that is.
Yep. So ADLs, that would be activities of daily living, getting dressed, going to the bathroom, anything that you do on a daily basis. In ABA, usually it's done within the school systems or with a BCBA behavior. I'm spacing on the name because it's late at night. But ABA, applied behavior analysis, I'm spacing, but it's really when they work with your child one-on-one. It's different. They'll do a functional behavior assessment, a behavior plan, kind of like trials. They're really working, say, on like one specific behavior to decrease that and maybe increase the positive behaviors and responses. Also, like services, if they're looking for individualized home supports too, that could also look like, again, I was saying the nursing. It could look like if your child struggles with communication. Really, it depends on the child and what the needs are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There we go.
There
I
we
wasn't
go.
able to do that. I was in audio jail.
You were. I apologize. We're having a lot of little glitches with Zoom tonight, so I do apologize for that.
That is quite all right. So I'll take it from here. Again, I'm one of the other TAs from the West region. I'm going to cover a little bit about our DDS Health Advocacy Program. And that is something we really do encourage in all of the individuals that are under our purview. It's not just a program, it's truly an independent lifestyle that acts as a guide to living and using your voice to know your rights. It's life skills to give you the right to find your voice, aimed to help the individual to be accepted into the real world by providing their self-expression, their freedom of speech, having choice and autonomy, independence, and exercising human rights. And it helps for lifelong skills, self-determination, and allowing the individual to make informed decisions and engage in problem solving. Again, that's something we really put a lot of emphasis on with our individuals. We can advance the slide. So I will briefly go through our 10 steps to being a good self-advocate. One is to believe in yourself, realize that you have rights, discuss your concerns, get the facts in writing, use the chain of command, know your appeal rights, be assertive and persistent, use communication skills. That was ironic. Ask for help and follow up. And we can advance. So at DDS, we have self-advocate coordinators, and what they help to do is promote self-advocacy, promote individual involvement, develop future leaders, and they support regional and state activities. And on the right hand, you'll see some self-advocate coordinator contacts for each region. And we also have the DDS Advocates Corner. Again, when this presentation is available in PowerPoint, those links are live and will bring you to these individual pages. They are all part of the DDS website. All right, we can advance again. Okay. This is where the rubber really hits the road here. It's a big part of what we do as transition advisors with that age group that was mentioned by Jen. The biggest things are first connecting with your DDS transition advisor. Now, this would happen if you apply to DDS and the individual is already in that 16 to 22 age range. We would be connecting very soon after your eligibility letter would come in the mail. If the individual is with DDS from an earlier age, we would reach out and connect to them once they're in high school in that age range and start becoming part of the individual's team at that point. And again, there's 18 of us around the state. There's 6 of us in each region, and we all cover different school districts and LEAs. The second big step is to explore decision-making options. This will be covered in further depth as we go forward, but this covers things like guardianship, conservatorship, power of attorney. Again, assisting individuals with making those important decisions in their lives as needed. The third is getting the individual enrolled in supplemental security income, or SSI, on the basis of disability. This is something we encourage all of our individuals to do so that they have a predictable income to assist with basic needs. Even if they do work, and we encourage our individuals to work, but we encourage everybody to apply for it. Number 4 is a big one when it comes to adult services and funding for adult services. That is getting on Connecticut Medicaid Husky Part C, not A, B, or D, but eventually Part C, because that is needed for waivered funding for adult services. So we encourage families and individuals to get applied to Husky C by that, at the latest, the age 21, 22 school year, assuming that they're still in school. And even if they did take their diploma at age 18 or whenever high school ended for them, that would still be the time that we would encourage them to apply for Husky C. And that is through social services. Step 5 is connecting with BRS. They are not represented here tonight, but they are an agency that we work pretty closely with, especially as our individuals are looking to gain employment in some way, shape, or form. And they do have a program called Level Up, which individuals can apply to, and not just DDS individuals. This can be anybody with an IEP can apply for Level Up, and that is a vocational program that BRS runs for people that are still, or individuals that are still in school. So we can touch on that a little bit after. Step 6, we always encourage everybody to get a photo ID through the DMV, regardless of whether or not the individual is going to be driving. And step 7 is registering to vote, and there are a variety of different ways. Actually, 6 and 7 can go together because if you are not registered to vote, the individual is not. The DMV has a box you can check when they apply for their photo ID to also register to vote. All right, we can advance. I know that was a lot. We'll kind of break these things down a bit. So what we do as transition advisors, we are kind of jacks of all trades. We assist students, families, schools, agencies, and case managers, who are kind of the next step after us. and to plan a student's transition from school life to adult life. We collaborate with other agencies such as BRS, which, by the way, I don't know if I said was the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. I know we throw a lot of acronyms and abbreviations around. They ensure that all transition options are explored and presented to students, families, and school systems for their consideration. And we also help to collaborate with providers for adult services to ensure that students and their families and their school are knowledgeable of all the different paths for employment and day service supports that exist out there. And there are a lot of different paths that one can take. All right. You can advance. Okay, this one's loaded. And I'm not going to go super duper in depth here, but this lays out some of the different options that families and individuals have when it comes to the age of 18 and the legal rights that transfer to the individual. If the family and the individual deem that it is appropriate to explore options to allow a guardian or conservator to assist the individual with these matters, these are the different options that exist out there. They include the big ones. I'll actually start on the right side, and then I'll talk a little bit about the left side. Probate court options, and a lot of the individuals that do go this route go one of these two ways. Guardianship is done by petitioning your local probate court, and this can be done up to 180 days before the individual's 18th birthday, so that the process can be done and there is no gap when the individual turns 18, especially in those cases where the individual has a lot of severe needs and really does need somebody there on that day, so they don't have to worry about, being responsible for all of their legal representation. So again, we think of it as kind of like the half birthday. Whenever the person's half birthday is half a year before that, that's how early you can start the guardianship process. There are two types of guardianship. There's limited, which can just maybe medical, just financial. And then plenary is another word for full guardianship. So the guardian has full legal scope and representation for the individual. And financial guardianship is an option if the protected person's assets do not exceed $10,000. Then the guardian can petition the court for control of that person's income and assets. Conservatorship, the timeline is a bit different. It can only be 45 days before the 18th birthday to petition the probate court for that. And the options are conservator of person and or conservator of estate. And this can be voluntary with the individual's consent, or in some cases it can be done involuntarily. Now back to the left side. Some other alternatives for decision-making include natural supports, power of attorney, advanced directives, and supported decision-making. There is a lot out there. This gets very technical, and we always encourage families to do all of the research that they want before taking one of these options, taking the plunge. So there are lots of great resources out there, and those links to Disability Rights Connecticut. The probate user guide is very, for a state court document, it's actually pretty user-friendly, and it answers a lot of frequently asked questions. So check that out if you're in that situation. And there's also probate user guide for conservatorship. But again, this process, if you're past the 18th birthday and it's still something you want to explore, you can. It's not, it's not like it's too late, but again, the rights, if none of this is done, the rights do transfer to the individual on that 18th birthday if one of these options has not been pursued. All right. We can advance. I know that was a lot. Any questions, pop them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them upon completion of the presentation. Another really, really important step that we guide our individuals through when they're in that transition range is applying for supplemental security income. And we try to encourage families to do this pretty much right from age 18. You cannot do this before the 18th birthday, but once that comes around, we encourage families and individuals to get right on this. It's a federal program designed to help the aged, the blind, and disabled. So for most of our individuals, that the latter, disability, is the basis for being eligible for SSI. It's cash to meet basic needs for food, clothing, and shelter. It does have asset and income limits. But again, there are ways to circumvent this for some individuals that might have a lot of assets in their name, maybe savings bonds. There are options such as ABLE accounts and special needs trusts, which are a separate topic that we can get into at another time. But there are ways for families to move some money around to make sure that the individual can still collect SSI. You can apply at ssa.gov, or you can find your local SSA office and apply in person. Being approved for SSI is an important step for individuals because it establishes the student's disability. And we encourage everyone to get SSI in place before applying for the Medicaid Husky C. It makes that process much easier. And after age 18, family income and assets should not be documented in the application. Very important. We tell people to think of the individual as a family of one. So mom and dad's, or grandma, grandpa, or whoever are the guardians or family members that they're living with, their assets, any of that, their income is not taken into consideration. It's only the individual who is being laid out in the application. An important thing to note, the eligibility and benefit amounts are redetermined every 1 to 6 years. So it does fluctuate, especially if the individual does end up being employed at some point, in which case SSI will be adjusted. All right, we can advance. And this is a biggie. Husky C, again, this is something that individuals with DDS need to be enrolled in order to access waivered funding and case management. And case management is long-term. Once you're on with a case manager, you stay in case management through the lifespan, basically. So this is a big step for individuals while they're still with the helpline and with us in the transition advisor role, is making sure families have taken care of this by the time they're looking to age out and finish special education in that age 22 year. Medicaid, as we know, is a state-federal partnership to provide healthcare services to adults with disabilities who are elderly or have low income. When the individual turns 18, apply for Husky C. You can do that online at connect.ct.gov. There are some cases when the parents or the family are having a lot of trouble accessing the application, or they really do need a helping hand. In some cases, the helpline can step in and assist with this process. We encourage families to do this on their own with a little guidance, but if, in some rare cases we do, the helpline can step in and help families that are really struggling with getting this done. The process will go smoother if the student has already been found eligible for SSI, so hence that's really a step that we encourage everyone to take before this. And again, apply for the individual only, separate from other family members residing in the home who may also have Medicaid. There is an asset limit here that individuals and families need to pay attention to. The individual's assets cannot exceed $1,600 unless they are working. And again, paying room and board, even if the individual is living at home, money can be taken out for room and board and utilities, and they ask about that when you apply. So the individual can absolutely live at home, but again, that's something that the family needs to navigate in order to keep Husky C eligibility. And an important thing, that students can remain on their parents' private insurance as a primary, and this can serve as their secondary if they would choose to stay on private as primary. So that can go until age 26 for the parents. And there's a number to check application status. All right. So again, to utilize those resources after school, the individual must be on Husky C and eligible for it. Otherwise, if the individual does not have Husky C, they can stay with the helpline and still access the family grants and respite and things like that Jen was talking about, but they will not have a waivered case manager unless Husky C is in place. All right. I know I just went over a whole lot of information. I hope everyone's digesting it okay. And we can advance the slide.
All right, thank you. So my name is Jeanean Cox. I'm a transition advisor in the South region and the New Haven office. And so I'm going to jump in for the Bureau of Rehabilitative Services, BRS, which is under ADS. So again, love the acronyms. And so that's the Aging and Disability Services. And this has to do with kind of the vocational side, and DDS and BRS work kind of simultaneously and can partner really nicely. And so BRS can kind of do a lot of the kind of startup or kind of bulk of pre-employment funding and training, and DDS can do the long-term supports as well. And, you know, I don't know, Laura, if you've had BRS come in the past to do any, so, and they can kind of go into depth. This is just kind of how we partner in helping individuals find employment and funding options. There's also BESB, the Bureau of Education and Services for the Blind. That's also under the ADS umbrella as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so to go a little bit further, and so BRS can work with DDS, and I think Zach mentioned it's anyone with an IEP or a 504 for adult services. And so within the school systems, there it's considered level up, and it's really more pre-employment training. And then when we get to adult services, it's focusing more on the competitive integrative employment. And so they're the pre-employment transition services, job counseling, work-based learning experiencing. They do counseling. They also do kind of the inventories and just trying to figure out where people's skill sets best match and kind of what jobs would be better fits for them. Self-advocacy in the workplace. So it's all of this pre-employment from 16 to 22. And then when they're getting ready to transition, you can use the adult services BRS. And then again, DDS comes in for the long-term supports. So next slide, please. All right. So additional tasks, and I think this was kind of covered by Zach as well. This just goes into a little bit further detail, but the apply for a state ID, we encourage this as early as possible to have the, you know, non-driver, or if individuals are applying for their driver's license, either way, they're going to go through the DMV and have that wonderful, pleasant experience and getting their ID. And then you can register to vote as well when you're doing this process. And you know, now there are, you know, there's the federal ID, so you need a little bit more information to get kind of that certified ID as well. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so employment first. This is in 2011. DDS made a commitment and devised policy to kind of really align, and it goes to what Jennifer said about kind of our mission and our goals for the individuals we serve. So this ties into having meaningful, fulfilling opportunities and really being active participants in the community. And for a very long time, employment wasn't a possibility. It wasn't a discussion, or it was, you know, a sheltered workshop or kind of something that was more hidden. And so in 2011, it was made first and foremost for DDS to align with our policy as very important. And so our commitment is to make it a conversation that all individuals that identify that they want to be employed, that they want to be participants in the community and be integrated to a workforce where they're working aside, you know, every member of the community. This is, so we devise policy, and so you know, it's part of the conversation that happens during those transition years. And we've created initiatives and kind of supports that helps that person, the individual, find meaningful, important employment. And it can be anything. And I think the next slide kind of goes further into that. Okay, so, okay. So when we are, sorry. So when we're looking at kind of adult services and what that means for an employment, everyone's at a different level and kind of it needs different supports. So it could be, the first thing is employment services. It could be that they're ready to work. They want to be self-employed. So there's micro enterprises or different businesses that people can start that we support. There's individual supported employment, ISE. So that's where someone can work on their own or work, in a position where they have a job coach supporting them. But they're working in a, whether it's a grocery store, it could be at Walmart, it could be in an office setting where they are employed with the community and they have job coach supports that help them depending on their needs. Group supported employment, GSE, it's really kind of a crew of individuals. So there could be 3, 5, depending with one job coach where they're going in as a team. So a lot of times there could be cleaning crews or, Goodwill is a really good example where you're going in as a crew. So you're not able to fully be independent, but you don't need one-on-one supports. And then customized employment is kind of a really creative way of looking at something. So it's really kind of doing a working assessment and figuring out where does this person shine? Where is this person going to best fit? And so it could be that they're really good at one task whether it's, I worked with someone who was really fast at making pizza boxes. So it wasn't, a full job, but we found a local pizza place that was willing to kind of have him there working and making pizza boxes. And we timed him and he was faster than anyone else. And so it's really customizing and figuring out, a place that's in the community that's going to make them shine and be as successful as possible while getting, earning a paycheck and feeling really part of something. So that's really the employment services, day services. Pre-employment, so you're in the transition program. Maybe you're not quite ready for a job yet. You're still kind of figuring things out. So one of the things that's offered is employment transition services. So it's sort of an extension of what the transition program is that's offered through school, but it's very community-based. So you're out in the community and you're doing different sites, and it's not meant to be permanent. So the employment transition services are really probably meant to be 3 years max, where you're really continuing to kind of build upon what the school system gave you to help for employment. One of the examples, sort of an internship type program, is Project Search, and that's kind of a very successful program throughout the state of Connecticut. It's a national program where you're working kind of along the school year, kind of a September to June, where you go to a location. A lot of times they're hospitals. There was a new one in my area I was really excited about that was at Albertus Magnus College. But you're going in and you kind of rotate through jobs and try on different jobs. And while you're there, you're also learning pre-employment skills. So you're doing kind of classroom work where you're working on interview skills, resume development, but you're then trying out jobs too. And at the end, a lot of the individuals kind of find employment, whether it's at the site where Project Search was or in a different site as well. And then kind of going away more a little bit from really focused on employment, there's day services. So group day supports, a DSO. I think a lot of people know it as a day program. There's some that are more, I would say, recreation focused, where you're kind of doing more volunteer or kind of more arts activities, cooking activities. But something that's newer that DDS has developed kind of in the last year are the two listed employment enrichment services and employment exploration options. And those are more kind of cover the day program, but really focus on employment, the employment side of things. And then in individual day supports has to do where you're on your own, you're not part of a larger program, and you're working one-on-one with the staff depending on how many hours you get. All right, next slide, please. All right. So this, again, you're going to have access to these slides. These are lots of wonderful resources for the employment and day services to explore. There's lots of information out there. And I think kind of one of the things as a transition advisor that we do, and we really like to partner with the individuals and the families that we're working with, is to explore all these options and to kind of break it down. And as we get to know the individuals that we're working with, whether it's participating in PPTs, meeting with the family, doing the guardianships, sitting in on those meetings, is we kind of work and kind of figure out in partnership with everyone is where the best fit is. and kind of guide you on kind of all of these services, because it can be very overwhelming when you're making that step to what, you know, adult services looks like. And it's very different from what schools offer. So we encourage families to kind of explore these options, you know, with the transition advisor and by yourself, just to see kind of what, you know, what sparks you and says, this is where I see my child. All right, next slide, please. All right.
I think that's really important to know. Families don't always realize that the services look very different in the adult world than in the school district.
Yes. And so I think for me, when I start meeting with families, and my goal is to get in earlier. And so sometimes, you know, I'm getting into PPTs at the age of 16, and there's not a lot that I can kind of offer at that point, but it's really just educating and reminding and talking about different programs and just setting the stage, because the families that I've worked with that have no idea, it's sort of a shock to the system when they first walk into one of those programs. And they're not bad, it's not, it's just different. And so how to kind of set the expectations and guide them and just get them comfortable with what it's going to look like too. So I think the earlier, the better, just to start having those conversations. Thank you for sharing that, Laura. And the one thing, so there's something called portability. And what this is really that you have control over what you do with your money, the funds that you receive. Nothing is permanent, so you can choose. And I think that's another thing when I'm working with families, when we're looking at programs, and you know, it's wanting to find the perfect fit for your child. And sometimes there's not the perfect fit, but it's sort of, is this good enough for now? Because it doesn't have to be permanent. When you pick something, you can try it out and it could work out spectacular. You know, it could be the most amazing thing in the world. And in 5 years, you could want to change, or you could try something and it doesn't work out. But the best, you know, thing is that you don't have to stick with it. You can choose to leave and change. And that's like any adult can do. You know, if you pick a job or you pick a college, you have the choice. You don't have to stay there. And it's not kind of this sentence for life. You can choose and move and change things up. All right, next slide, please. All right, so service delivery options. So there's, you know, with those day options and the employment and day options, there's 3 different, you know, ways of doing it. So there's provider agencies where you can actually, you know, there's a provider, you pick them, you go with them, they're responsible for hiring their own staff. They take your funds, they work with the case manager, they work with your child, the individual. We have, you know, DDS has checked, you know, done everything and checked everything, and they are qualified providers. On our website, there's a list of qualified providers. You can look by your town. You can look by different categories. I find the easiest way to share with families and for you to look it up is by town. And then each one kind of has a link and goes over what services they offer. The other option so for my area where I serve in the South region is the shoreline of Connecticut. So it's a lot of smaller towns. We don't have as many providers in those towns. So one of the kind of service delivery options that's becoming a little more appealing is self-direction. It's a little more work, but you can kind of take your funds and you're hiring, you and the individual's hiring staff and kind of using those funds to create the program that they want and kind of how they want it to look. And then there's agency with choice. There's limited options currently for this service delivery option, but it's really kind of a hybrid of the provider agency and self-direction. So the individual shares the responsibility with the agency for hiring and managing those funds. Okay, so next slide, please. So this goes into a little bit more information about self-direction. This again can be overwhelming for some families, but when they're looking at the providers offered and they're not feeling like any of them are a good fit, this is where I think some of the families are, at least ones I'm working with, are kind of looking into this more. So you're the employer, you interview, you post jobs, and you have this budget that you work with, and you can kind of set an hourly rate. You can set, you know, how many hours you want. The one downside for self-direction is you're not part of a greater program with other individuals. So that social aspect and kind of, you know, interacting with others that you're getting at a school-based program aren't there. So there's pros and cons, I would say, to a lot of things, but it's when you get to this place, it's talking to the transition advisor you're working with and kind of going through all the options just to see, you know, what's out there. So you can tour providers, you can look at the self-direction side of things. And again, with the portability, you can pick one thing. And if it doesn't work out, you know, you can try something new as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, so traditional case management. So when you've done kind of all the tasks Zach touched on, where you've gotten your SSI, you've gotten your Husky C, you're getting to that last year, and this is traditional, like the typical process. That last year of your transition program, as long as you have Husky C, you're ready to be transferred to a traditional case manager. And so for every region, it's a little bit different when that happens. And it really depends on the case management availability. So I, in the New Haven office this year, and I, you know, Zach and Jennifer, you can talk to it a little bit differently if you want to, but some of my individuals had Husky C. They did not get a case manager until June, some July. And that's really scary and stressful because, you know, school ends in June that last year. You're trying to find a provider to start a program July 1, and you have to have a case manager to be able to start a program. So in some situations, people can get case managers January of that last year where you're doing all of these tasks. And I don't see, you know, I'm painting a very kind of honest picture. It really depends on the availability, but you're working with the transition advisor, you're talking through it. We're all communicating and being informed. And so although some of the individuals I work with, it was a little bit later for them to get case managers, you know, by the end of the summer, they're all in programs and starting and settled. So it definitely can be stressful, and it's, you know, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but there's a lot of people there to support you and kind of help guide you through that process still. When you get the traditional case manager, they're going to do the level of need, the LON for short. And so that level of need, that really kind of determines the level of supports and kind of what your funding, you know, what it looks like for you and what kind of program the individual is going to be able to participate in. After the LON, the individual plan, the IP, similar to an IEP, or not similar because it's very different, but sort of along the same kind of lines, the guidance for kind of, you know, every year it's updated. And then the case manager is going to refer for waivered services and get you on the waiver so that you can start adult services there. All right, next slide, please. And one of the things that DDS really supports, we have lots of ambassadors, and I know there's lots of resources out in the community. You know, there's schools that are utilizing this. Lots of people can be trained on this as Charting the Life course. And it's really a person-centered planning tool that was created by families, really with the belief that aligns with our mission, that everyone has the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations just as others do in their community. So this is a great tool that can be used kind of to guide the program, the planning, and kind of the life for the individual at DDS that could be updated. And there's, on our website, there's a long list of trained ambassadors that can help and participate with this as well. All right, next slide, please.
I'm just going to interject really quickly with Charting Life course. It is literally life course. It can be done when you're very little, and I actually have done it and used it for my mother who lives in another state. And I know some folks have actually used it for their retirement plan. So it's very useful tool.
I think when I first saw it, I said that everyone needs this done. You know, I agree that it would be lovely to have it done for myself, for my children as well. So I support and agree with that. I think the majority of what is left are a lot of links. and kind of resources. So, and you know, you'll have access to this to be able to look and explore. So lots of different state and federal agency links. Next slide, please. And then it goes through the end of this. And if you don't know who your transition advisor is, oh, sorry. So it goes through more resources, and then it names who your transition advisor is depending on your town with their email address, phone number. And you can kind of keep, so there's the North region. Jennifer's at the top there. Started the presentation. She's at the top of the list there. And then I think the next slide is the West or this. There's 6 per region. And then, so these are all 6 are for the North region. Next slide. And then the South region. And so the South region offices, and we have New Haven, Norwich, and Wallingford. And the next slide. And everyone has access to these slides. I think those were in the chat. So you can kind of look it up that way. And then I think after the South region, next slide is the West region, where Zach is. And I think next slide. Yeah. And then that's it. That's all we So I appreciate, you know, being able to share this and kind of ending the presentation. It's a lot of information that can be really overwhelming. So I appreciate everyone hanging in there. And